Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Let's take a look at the state of the economy, some emerging issues with Teriba, CEO, Economic Associates, who will be discussing the legislative framework and the responsibility of the National Assembly with regard to the Nigerian economy. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, always a delight to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Now, let me start with this issue about legislation. Nigeria's economic situation, it's something that gives a lot of Nigerians concerns. And there are dozens of economic legislation issues before the National Assembly that have not been dealt with, that have not been passed. What is responsible? What difference can this legislation make?
Right. Yes, I was privileged to be part of a special session at the Economic Summit during the week on legislation.
The Nigerian
Economic Summit. Yeah, and you had 3 legislators on the panel, including a senator, then 2 members of the House of Reps. And then you had, private sector contributors as well. The key issue, if I would just try and sum up some of the issues, is that effective economic legislation, requires paying attention to 3 components. You call them lags. In economic policy, they call them lags of economic policy. But you can say, lags of economic legislation. Question 1 is how soon does it take the legislators to recognize an economic problem as one requiring intervention? And the example, a common example there was, in the face of a global crisis, it didn't take the American Congress long to convene, all stakeholders. The president showed up, the governor of the Central Bank Federal Reserve Board showed up.
Well, didn't one American president say that his priority is economy, economy, economy?
Yeah, but Congress provided the leadership. Okay. They recognized the problem as quickly as anybody else. They arranged for a discussion of it. The second lag, so it could take you years. I mean, the question I was asking is that since the recession broke out, 5 quarters, we came out of it, but we were in it for 5 quarters. Did the legislature recognize it as something requiring their intervention? So you have to worry about how do we shorten that recognition. And then this next one, once you recognize, is decision. It didn't take the Congress long to rally around, stakeholders and come to a decision. So their decision lag was short. And once you take the decisions are about what actions to take. Then you roll out the action. The third one is action lag. How long does it take you to get to action? And so we were suggesting to the parliamentarians that perhaps they should learn from successful democracies. What helps them to optimize the lags is that they have, apart from the regular committees, they have what they call select committees in the National Assembly. Members, it's made up of parliamentarians, but they actually don't do legislation. Their role is to recognize and recommend decisions. And they feed all the other committees relating to the economy to take action, because action is about actual legislating.
Yeah, I get the point you are making. But in terms of lessons, you use the phrase lessons from elsewhere, from other jurisdictions.
Yes.
Now, if you look at what happens in other jurisdictions, the leadership, because you seem to be putting the onus on the legislature.
Yes.
Sometimes the initiative could even come from the executive. Do you see the executive and the legislature in Nigeria working in harmony? Could the conflict between the National Assembly and the executive arm be responsible for these lags that you have identified?
In Nigeria, in our experience since 1999, we've always focused on the executive. And even when the executive wants to act, we say there are dozens of legislation that had been in the works but have not been concluded. Yeah. Therefore, the issue, you can't, the executive is doing perhaps the much they could. They've brought up an economic recovery plan. They've, introduced these initiatives of doing business and stuff. but legislation has been a bit slow. And in most countries, both agencies have to be at par for the best results. And suggesting, select committees for the National Assembly could make a difference.
Well, one commentator recently, was saying that part of the problem we face in these and other regards is that there was no properly articulated agenda by the new political party that came into power in 2015. That if there had been an agenda properly defined, a roadmap, a framework, not something that you construct as you go along, ad hoc, we probably wouldn't have this situation.
Well, you have to be careful about the extent to which you can push an agenda. Economic management actually involves more of responding to shocks. I mean, whatever agenda you wanted to draw before 2015, you could not have reckoned that oil prices are average $100 a barrel, you will be facing $40, $50. Counting yourself lucky when you got 55. So the key issues is the capacity to recognize and respond to problems. Yes.
Well, now, just in a second, what are those main issues that you've been talking about that are not being treated expeditiously by the legislature?
Right. A problem that needs to be recognized as requiring legislative intervention is the loss of Nigeria's export income from an average, of $100 billion in 1 decade to less than $50 billion now. The problem of recession, of devaluation emphasized are symptoms of the liquidity problem. So what difference can legislation make in resolving Nigeria's liquidity crisis? And I'll follow it on, I'll repeat the example of Saudi Arabia that is liberalizing 16 infrastructure sectors. There's no way you are going to liberalize sectors without backing it with legislation that breaks government monopoly. So Nigeria needs to look very hard at its infrastructure sectors, break government monopoly to attract the foreign direct investment that will help us to solve the liquidity problem.
I remember you touched on that last week when we discussed infrastructure financing. Always a pleasure to have you on this program, Teriba. Thank you very much. Right now we have breaking news. Austria's Conservative chief, Sebastian Kurz, looks set on Sunday to become Europe's youngest leader after parliamentary elections, with projections placing him ahead of the far right and the Social Democrats. The People's Party, rebranded by Kurz as his personal movement, is forecast to reap 30.2% of the vote, followed by the Anti-Immigration Freedom Party with 26.8%, and the Social Democrats with 26.3%, Public TV reported. Watching this day live, Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Rueben Abati in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. From all of us here on Arise News, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.